I forgot to mention one other thing. I've invested in NFTs.
Okay.
That one did not track the stock market at all, but I could tell you a little bit about that. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or therapy. Our full disclaimer can be found in the show notes. Enjoy the show. Welcome, everyone, to the Man Up Together podcast. My name is Alex Peskin, and I'm here with my lifelong friend and co-host, Bobby Jacobs. For those who are watching this, you can see that we are in a different location today.
Yeah.
Hopefully, those who are listening, it sounds the same and still sounds good. We shifted over to my place because I have no one else to be in the house while my children are sleeping.
One of these days, we'll figure out that combined babysitter thing, all of our kids in one house.
That actually sounds great.
Yeah.
A double sleepover where we leave.
Yes, there we go.
Cool.
There we go. I like that.
I'm in. I don't know how that works, but I'm in. See how it goes.
Green couch as opposed to green walls in my office. So
green.
There we go.
It's just
green.
all about green.
All about green.
That's a good
segue into
our
the conversation today.
And talk about some green.
Before we get there, this weekend, or Kentucky Derby, big weekend in my life, big weekend in a lot of people's life. For those that have had the opportunity to go to Churchill Downs, I think even when obviously the Derby's not happening, it's a beautiful place. I've had the opportunity to be there a number of times, and it's just fascinating. This year, there was some really interesting, wide-ranging presentation from trainers, and there were some new trainers in there. And got to give a shout out to the first female trainer to win a Kentucky Derby, which was really amazing to watch. Really great Derby, I think.
I saw that this was the first woman trainer whose horse won the Kentucky Derby. We're in 2026 now.
Okay.
The first woman trainer whose horse won any Triple Crown was 2023.
Yeah, Jen Antonucci.
Horses have been racing for a long time.
Yeah, we can do a whole episode on the history of horse racing. I don't know that anybody wants to listen to that.
You definitely want to talk about it, I bet.
There's absolutely been an entrance into horse racing and women trainers. Women have always played a massive role in the equine world.
But is there a but in that?
Yeah, there's a but. But thoroughbred racing, I think, has been later to some of this. And I think it's because of some of the dynamics of the industry, but I think it's changing. And we're seeing really amazing trainers, owners, people that are working in the industry. One of the things that I think has always been fascinating, right? Throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to lecture at the majority of the veterinary schools across the country. They'll have pictures of their classes. You're in a fraternity. What do they call the pictures? The composites.
Yeah.
So they have these composites, right, of all the years that they had graduating classes. And over time, demographics of these classes has shifted, and the vast majority, in some universities, well over 80% of the graduating veterinarians are female. That was not the case.
And that's the shift.
That is a shift.
There.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you watch this happening. And so, yes, Jen Antonucci winning that Triple Crown race was a glass ceiling broken. And I'm really excited to this weekend, watching that female trainer win. So it was wonderful. Really enjoyed the race. Other cool thing we saw was the winning jockey, and his brother actually went to the wire together, and watching the two of them so ecstatic in their own right for going 1-2 with the Derby. But then just watching the joy that they shared with each other, to be at the pinnacle of their sport was really incredible and was really amazing. My daughter, I think, was the first year we watched together, and she was like genuinely excited to watch the horses racing and was asking questions and super interested.
Yeah, that's cool. I remember when I lived in New York, we went out to Belmont to watch the Kentucky Derby.
Right.
Because we can't go to Belmont for the Belmont race. You're not going to get tickets for that. But people like me, my age, I was in my 20s, then, went out, and we're all out on the field drinking and putting in bets. I remember most was we ran out of beer, and one of our friends went to another crew and was just talking to them. And then he walked back with a 30-pack of beer.
Hey, you got to make friends, right?
Yeah, I also remember I bet on one race. And I bet based on the name, because I thought Saltine Warrior was a hilarious name. And I won $9 because of Saltine Warrior once.
Fantastic.
So it's cool.
Yeah.
Fun.
Anyway, we can get horses back in the public eye again. So
good for your business, right?
Good for business. Always good for business.
Good.
So, yeah.
Do you know what they're all eating? Any of them eating something formulated by you?
Yeah. So a good number of the horses this year eating feeds containing products that I'm intimately involved in. So
let's go,
including the winner, which I'm excited about.
Way to go, man.
The throw a bone out to those nutritionists. Fueling those horses. Pretty interesting. There was a horse that just sold in Ocala, um, one of the big thoroughbred sales down there. $15 million for a
$15 million.
horse. We're going to talk about finances here in this episode.
What? Someone bought a horse for racing purposes, likely for $15 million, or race. We'll call it racing purposes. Either way,
racing purposes. Yeah. It was a racehorse. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone who will create more racehorses.
There we go.
Today for
Why do men like this?
We are going to talk about why do men like creative investment strategies?
Like a $15 million horse.
Like saying, hey, if I spend $15 million on this horse, I might make money off of that.
Right.
That sounds really creative.
And risky.
Creative and risky form of investment.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. So what are some, when you think of the creative investment strategies?
I mean, you just opened my eyes to what all I want to talk about now is that. But
give me some other
ones I
thoughts,
was thinking about, a top one in my mind is cryptocurrency, options trading, also gambling, but also maybe these are in some way a form of gambling. And we talked about that before. So we are going to have some similarities with all of this. But those are the things that I really think about most, where they're
non-traditional.
Yeah,
right?
They're not traditional. They're not based as much on the tried and true ways of making money through investing.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about, why do men like this? Why do men like creative forms of investment?
Yeah. So for creative, why do men like this? I think the first thing is, do men like this? I looked up some data, paper published at Spain actually, that said that approximately 75% of crypto wealth is held by men. So why do men like this? I think it goes back again to some of the stuff, like you said, that we talked about in the gambling episode. But I think there's this interest that men have in it because it can take the place, maybe in some ways, of some of that gambling, those gambling tendencies. I think there is the concept of that providing nature. And so if I do make these investments, non-traditional as they may be, it allows me to be that provider in some ways. A little bit more.
So that's interesting. I hear you saying that it combines the two different drives in a way that
deep-seated things.
Makes you think that you're killing two birds with one stone instead of actually delving off of the path of safety here, where you're saying we have this need to feel like we are a good provider.
Right.
But we also have this need to feel good. And sometimes gambling helps us with that.
Right.
But what if I convince myself that these things that do feel like gambling are actually ways that I'm providing for my family? And to be clear, there are people out there who have made great amounts of wealth through options trading, through cryptocurrency, through buying $15 million horses, through whatever it is.
Most people lose money on those $15 million horses.
Most people lose money on most of these
Yeah.
things as well. And that's actually really interesting, where you're saying we're trying to maybe convince ourselves one is okay because we're saying it's helping with the other, when maybe we'll get into this in why is this maybe not such a good thing, but maybe this isn't the best way to provide for our families. You were saying, I know very little about these things. I have dabbled with cryptocurrency, options trading. And so options trading, that's derivatives. It's betting if a stock is going to go up or down, basically.
Gotcha.
It's not owning the stock, it's betting if it's going to go up or down. A lot of people might have heard of that through Wall Street Bets.
Okay.
They do a lot of options trading in the Wall Street Bets world, which was not the same as what financial advisors were saying to do in order to invest in money and just make it go up. I've traded contracts on commodities. So things like copper and oil.
Big in the news right now.
Yeah.
Oil.
I've traded gold. I've tried everything.
Okay.
And you're making me wonder now, because a lot of the reason that I've done this is a lot of the reason that I tell myself I've done this is
more.
What if I can fast track us to provide for my family? What if I can hit it big? What if I can just bring in a little bit of extra income so that we can continue to thrive?
Sure. So let me ask you a question. So we talked about risk before in the sense of, we did the Why Do Men Like This on the diving with sharks
Mhm.
and bull running. And again, there was a lot of the statistics that we shared where men were more likely to take those risks on, right? So as I think about some of these non-traditional ways of investment and money making, I look at this and I see maybe in some cases more risk involved in
Mhm.
those. It, I'm guessing, or there's a correlation between that risk that men would maybe take in running with the bulls or diving with sharks into, well, I'm going to take a risk, maybe not with my bodily harm being the outcome, but maybe with that financial aspect of it. And I
Yeah.
wonder if there's a risk component there that again is maybe some of that driver,
Yeah. I think that we have a
higher tolerance.
higher propens higher propensity for
Okay.
risk, but also I think a higher tolerance for risk, probably for similar
Yeah.
reasons. Evolutionarily,
Yeah.
the men who took more risks were more noticed and had more clout and
Sure.
things like that
Sure.
that led to having mates and procreating. And
Yeah.
the ones who didn't procreate, their
Yeah.
offspring maybe would have had less risk, but they didn't have
Interesting.
offspring.
Right.
But yeah, this is more risky. I'll give you a stat, right? You did
Okay.
the crypto one. Options trading, I think it said was 90 to 91%
Wow.
male, and it's riskier.
Yeah.
There are strategies that big investment bank firms
Sure.
use to hedge their bets when they're trading stocks.
Hmm.
But when the public is using option strategies, it's mostly just gambling.
Yeah.
Like I will put in an options bet
Bet.
that is saying the stock market's gonna go up
Sure.
today. And I can sit there and watch this. And what does the stock market do every
Up and
day?
down.
It
Up and
goes like this all day long. And sometimes it goes like this
right.
all day long. And I will watch and say, oh my gosh, should I sell now? It's going really low. Or, oh my gosh, should I sell now? It's going really high. But what if I sell now and it goes even higher? I'm going to hate myself. And it's adrenaline. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
You hit it,
It's,
right? It's right
yeah.
there. It's that dopamine. It's the adrenaline. It's all the things
Yeah.
that make us feel good. The reason that we do a lot of these things. So, okay, so let's move on to why why are these good things, right? Why can we consider some of these non-traditional investment strategies a good thing?
Okay. I think when you are investing in something and you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of understanding, you are likely to be able to not always pick a winner,
Hmm.
but to some extent make a smarter choice. I also talked about with options trading, there are specific ways that it can be used to actually make your investments less risky.
Okay.
If you use them that way, knowing what you're doing can be good. I think if this is something that you're doing with a very low percentage of your wealth,
Hmm.
it can be a good thing because to some extent, maybe it's okay to call it recreation.
Sure.
You're enjoying yourself. You're doing something that feels interesting to you, that is exciting to you. And there's a really, really, really small chance, but a chance that it leads you to make some money as
Well,
well.
one of the things that I think is cool is you mentioned when you dive into something, I think it's fun to learn and learn
Yeah.
new things. So if some of these, whether it's learning about crypto, options, prediction market, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that's always fun to learn something new, whether you actually make that investment or not. But
Right.
learning is, I think, a
Yeah.
positive of these for sure.
That is one thing that I did enjoy a lot when I
Yeah.
did these things. You have to know what you're doing to
Yeah.
learn. And some of you can read as much as you want, but then you do it.
Yeah.
Like you learn more while it's happening,
Sure.
which is a scarier form of learning, but learning nonetheless.
Yeah.
I do think that
You get
that's
to do math
interesting.
too. You and I both.
I do like math.
We have a shared common interest in math as a subject. So
Yeah.
math is always fun. I think one of the things that I've seen, and maybe it's just because of the nature of where we are today as a society, there's a lot of social networks that I think are built around some of these. Whether they're true on your phone social networks that you can
Right.
build, Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, Instagram. We kind of bring this back with a lot on the Why Do Men Like This is that camaraderie aspect. There's, the opportunity to meet other like-minded individuals. There's the opportunity to meet other people that may know more about a subject.
Mhm.
Now we will talk about this on why this may not be a good thing. There's the social aspect. And if you can find someone that has a similar interest in something that you have
Yeah.
yourself, hey, that's always fun. Make new friends and learn new things together. I think it's always
That's
a
a
good
good
thing.
point.
So why?
So why do men not like this? I feel like can just fit really nicely into this
Yeah.
because I love the idea of groups where you're interested in things together. I think maybe even one place to start though for why why is this maybe not a good thing is when you're taking other people's advice, you're kind of giving away that control of, I did a lot of research and I know, and some people are really trustworthy and some people are not really trustworthy. We talked in the
Manosphere
when we
episode,
reviewed Inside the Manosphere, one of the guys made money off of his investment strategies, and it was not successful for, I'm sure, most people who did that, but he got a cut of everything that they put in. So that didn't actually matter to him.
Yeah.
You just have to be convincing.
Well, it was the whole do exactly what I do and you'll get exactly what I have. And unfortunately, if I were to make the exact same investments that you made yesterday, but I make them tomorrow, well, that's not the exact same investment, right?
Yeah.
You know, especially
or even 5 minutes later sometimes,
the
because they are
volatility,
risky, so they are volatile.
Yeah. So again, I think there's, like you said, that's that trust aspect of it. If you have that trust, you can make that trust. That's in the good category. But unfortunately, and maybe this isn't the case for every situation, but I do think there are people that take advantage of maybe some people's, naivety or ignorance of certain things. And that's personally, that's what scares me a little bit is I don't know enough about this. I haven't spent the time to research it enough personally. Therefore, it's not that I'm scared to do it. I just avoid it completely. Right? Now, if I had the time, the opportunity to sit down and study it with you, I'd much rather watch football with you.
But that's actually a great point though, because I do enjoy this, but if I were to really analyze what all of my interesting and creative forms of investing I've done are over the last few years, I am probably hovering around the same performance, if not slightly less, probably I don't know, but probably I would guess, than what it would have been to put it in a low cost ETF that tracks the stock market and just goes, and I would have left it there. And right now I would probably have the same, if not a little bit more money than I did.
And less anxiety, less.
It's anxiety and stress and just time.
Yeah.
So much time.
That's a good point.
And so
a really good point.
That's something that you think about as well. Almost everything you read is going to say active investing strategies are never more successful than just track the stock market.
Active being what we're kind of talking about.
Like
pay attention to these
buying
things.
and selling
Got
and
it.
crypto and options and all of it. I forgot to mention one other thing. I've invested in NFTs.
Okay.
That one did not track the stock market at all, but I could tell you a little bit about that. Like there's so many different things that you can look at. And if you know what you're doing, someone makes money off of all of these things. Somebody does. But oftentimes it's a few people at the top who take advantage of a lot of people at the bottom. And that's something to be careful for. And so one more thing, just thinking about why is this maybe not a good thing? Another thing that I read was that even just in the stock market in general, the majority of the people who invest are male. I think it was closer to more like 60 something percent. So not as high as these other things. Yet tracking performance, women perform better in the stock market.
Interesting.
They have like biologically less tolerance for risk. And so what they probably do is they listen to someone who says active investing is never better than finding a low cost ETF that tracks the stock market, putting the money in and not checking it every day and just letting it ride. They probably do that. And so they win. So that's something to think about, right? However much we want to say we're providing for our family and however much we might be not admitting that we like the excitement of it, actually it's probably just better to do the tried and true thing.
I mean, I've heard multiple times people say the stock market is just legalized gambling. And I don't know that I disagree.
You can use it that way.
Right.
You can use it that way.
I think that, that's an interesting thing to put the biology into it, to put the genetics into it and see that. So hey, if you guys have any thoughts on this, because I think this is something that a lot of people have a lot more knowledge of than I do for sure. Let us know. Why do you like crypto?
Send us a picture of the horse you may recently bought for 7, 8, 9 figures.
If you spent less than $15 million on a horse, you got a deal. I would say real good
to
deal.
the moon.
But hey, if you made a lot of money in GameStop, I want to know that too. Because that,
Mhm.
again, didn't understand it, still don't understand it, but thought it was fascinating that there
Yeah,
was some
that's
people
the
that made
Wall
some.
Street bets
Yeah.
thing where that's a community also, but that community, they brag when they make money and they brag when they lose money. I
Okay.
think they call it loss porn,
Okay.
where they will show their account and the line go like this.
Is this like a coping strategy here?
Probably.
Interesting?
And so, yeah, that's it. But yeah, if you're a part of that community, tell us
Yeah. Let
what
us know.
feels good to you there.
Yeah. I want to understand your loss porn.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
With that,
why do men like this? And it's interesting to think about all the ways that we can creatively invest and find adrenaline sources, probably. We're going to tie this into our main deep dive topic today. So let's get into that now.
let's do it.
All right. So today we're going to talk about finances. We're not actually talking about what you should and shouldn't do.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're definitely not going to tell you how to invest your money. I don't know what I'm talking about. So there's
Yeah, well, actually, let's get it
disclaimer
out
on
of the
that.
way now.
Yeah.
Here's how you should invest your money. Talk to a professional.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Call someone who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Have a meeting
Right.
and make sure it's someone you trust.
Right. And I could tell you lots and lots about lots and lots of things. That doesn't mean I know
That's
what
it.
I'm talking about.
That's it.
Find someone who is trained in this. And even they may not always
Right.
have the best motivations, but do your homework.
Yeah.
That's a good one. But today, the way that we're going to talk about this is more about how we can understand ourselves in a way that can help us be more aware of what comes up when we do invest. I think that could be really useful just like sitting here right now when you were talking about these two different things that are important, being a provider and getting the
adrenaline
excitement
rush.
of gambling. Even I was able to reflect on myself and go, yeah, that's it. And the more we're able to just think about these things, the more we're able to be intentional about what it looks like to show up in our lives, to make decisions, to be there for people who matter to us. The three things I want to talk about today around finance are how we learned to be the way that we are with finances. This is different with everybody. I want to talk about abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset.
Yep.
And then I want to talk about finances and relationships.
Perfect.
So the question I'd love to start with is, what did you hear that taught you about finance throughout your life, maybe at a young age?
Yeah. So growing up, grew up in, I would say, a middle class household, Florida. Both my parents work. We never had excess money to throw around as a family. My parents were very hardworking. They were dual providers in the household throughout my life. Both of my parents had a multitude of careers, just a wide variety of things that they did. Oftentimes, the bigger reason that my parents, I would say, had disagreements and arguments, it was the main instigator of arguments. Oftentimes.
Okay, so what you learned about finance is you got to hustle.
Yep.
Right? And so tell me where I'm wrong, but you're saying I saw my parents have a lot of jobs.
Yep.
And work hard.
Yep.
And I imagine get new jobs because they want to level up.
Yep.
And you saw finance is something that is stressful between people.
Yeah, deeply stressful, deeply emotional. I remember at certain times where there were fears around how much money there was in the bank or what we were going to do. And I can very much distinctly remember times growing up where there were times of more and times of less. All of that together helped me to build a couple of things. One, an awareness of money, maybe at a younger age than I needed to know and needed to have that awareness. It also gave me that awareness of the stress around finances. And that, I'm sure, was at a younger age than maybe my parents intended for that to happen. It's something that my wife and I have had very distinct conversations about, specifically that. I don't want my children to ever have to think about the financial situation that we are in as a family. I want them to respect money and not just think that money grows on trees, that you have to work for it. I want all those values as well. But I don't want
somehow
them to
do that without developing an anxiety and stress around it.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So tell me about your background.
I have some very specific memories that I think were crucial in how I developed my idea around finances. The very first one, I remember growing up, I don't know how long this was, but for a period of time on Wednesday nights, me and my parents would go out to a restaurant for dinner.
Okay.
And I always knew Wednesday night, we're going to go out tonight for dinner. And one day in elementary school, second, third, fourth grade, I wasn't very old, but this is a flashbulb memory for me. I remember it was maybe a Wednesday or maybe earlier in the week. And I'm saying, oh, are we going to go out for dinner? And they said, we're actually not going to do that anymore because we want to be saving money.
Okay.
And that is the first thing that I can think of. Oh, money is a thing,
Right.
and it's not always available.
Right.
And I think that impacted me in a way that started to make me more conscious. I think maybe a little more nervous about it. My dad liked to tell a story where I save my money up whenever I would get money, whether it's the like $2 I got a month for allowance or something from a grandparent for my birthday. I would put in my wallet. And we went to a hockey game, Florida Panthers game.
Oof.
And I brought my wallet
before they were the 2-time Stanley Cup. Got it.
Bad Florida Panthers.
Yeah.
And I wanted to buy something from the souvenir shop.
Okay.
He said, okay, that's why you brought your wallet, right? I said, yeah, I'm going to buy something. I looked around and I walked back and forth. And I said to him, I think I'm going to save my money. I don't know. And he told this story for the rest of his life. And I think it stood out to him because another way that I learned about finance was through my dad. He was very much the opposite.
Okay.
Where he wasn't super careful with money. And he did also some creative investment strategies. He collected sports memorabilia. And
you're talking baseball cards, signed jerseys,
baseball cards, and signed bats.
Okay.
I think those were the main things.
Okay.
Mostly signed bats. Baseball cards was when he was younger.
Got it.
But this was a strategy because he kept them in his closet. He didn't display them. They were investments. That was one of his strategies.
I know your mom. I'm sure she appreciated a closet full of baseball.
Oh, she appreciates it because she doesn't know how to get rid of
the
signed baseball bats now. However much she wants to. And so that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
But those actually do, I guess, go together.
Sure.
My learning through what I did and also through what he did, because I learned, money isn't just always there. You're not always going to get to go out to dinner, which was like a fun thing for an 8-year-old kid.
Absolutely.
And that changed me, I think, right? It's the little things sometimes. I remember for the rest of my life, I looked at the price on the menu, and no matter how good or not good I thought our finances as a family were, I ordered the thing that was a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
And that became my identity as someone who saves and saves and saves and is afraid of spending money on things. And I don't think that has benefited me so much, because I think there is a middle ground to everything, but definitely an impact.
It's interesting you brought that, you bring your dad up into it. And I'm going to go a generation further back. So my grandfather, my mom's dad was a Holocaust survivor. He was also a very hardworking person, he owned his own business and worked well into his 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So worked literally his entire life. But as a Holocaust survivor, his mindset was very much around, I don't know what tomorrow holds. And therefore, I ain't saving for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so my grandfather would work very hard for his money, and he would spend his money. He was generous with his money. But I remember there was always a little bit of that dichotomy from our household where that money wasn't necessarily as available. And not saying my grandfather had excess money to throw around all the time, but it was a very different mindset. We talk about the things that happen in our lives and how that changes kind of how we see things and do things and think things. I obviously sincerely hope that we never have to have another generation that has to have a mindset like Holocaust survivors. But there's absolutely a historical impact on all the things that we do. And one of the things that I would love to learn about more is how to have those conversations with my children. I want them to see the value in money, that it isn't always something that's just there. But I don't want them to have anxiety around it at a young age. I don't want them to have stress about it at a young age. I don't want them to have my money thoughts owned inside of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something that I'd love to learn more about myself personally.
That's interesting. Think about how can we raise our kids in a way that they can feel a little bit
Yeah.
different. Also, I feel like you and I had a very similar upbringing
Yeah.
around finances. And I'm sitting here as well saying this made me become a saver. And I think being a saver meant something different for me than it did for you.
Mhm.
Because it meant I'm not going to spend my money on anything unless I think it's going to make me money.
Interesting.
But I think for you, it meant something different, right? Like now I'm
Yeah.
thinking about that and I said, oh, I became a saver right after we had the conversation in Why Do Men Like This, where I named all of the dumb things I do with money, which feels very different.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in my wife and I make sure that we have money available for the unforeseen circumstance.
Right.
But we also make sure that we are spending our money on experiences that we think are important.
Mm-hmm.
Going on vacations, we've made it a point for ourselves that we want to make sure that our children get to experience as much of the world as they possibly can. Just something that I didn't have the opportunity to do growing up. We traveled growing up, but it was very much to visit family, whether it was in Canada, in New Jersey. We had a lot of camping, a lot of time in North Carolina, but we didn't have the financial freedom to take my parents take us to different countries and things like that. So, um, yes, it's different people's priorities and different people's
Yeah.
goals and what they look at, and who knows what the future holds at different seasons of life and whatnot.
It's so interesting. I actually want to shift us into our next
Yeah,
topic here because I think they're connecting, right? We're
yeah,
talking about what did you learn about money? Some people are going to learn money is scarce,
hmm
so you have to be careful. Some people are going to learn money is scarce, so you have to make the most of it. Some people are going to learn money is abundant.
So let's
It'll just be out there. And so let's shift that now
perfect.
into our next topic here. What we were going to talk about now is the difference between a scarcity mindset and an abundance mindset.
Let's first define it.
Yeah,
Maybe, yeah,
right. So scarcity mindset is basically saying you should be nervous about this
hmm
because it is a finite commodity that is not always going to be there.
I like the way you're explaining this because it's not just about money, right?
Yeah.
It's a scarce commodity. Doesn't matter. You insert the commodity, love, emotion,
Yeah.
finance, right?
That's a great point. And abundance mindset is saying this is here now. It'll be here again in the future. It'll keep growing. The more you share, the more you get,
Yeah.
kind of
There's
thing.
always an opportunity
Yeah.
to get more of it.
And I want to say, thinking about the two of ours, help me if you feel differently
Yeah.
about this. If I had to put us into categories, it sounds like you live with a little bit more of an abundance mindset and I live with a little bit more of a scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
We are making money.
Yep.
And you're saying, I want to make sure my family is having certain experiences and able to benefit from making more money. And I'm saying, I know we're not making enough money, but with the money that we do make, I should take that money and hopefully turn it into more money.
Yeah.
And the more I try, the more different ways I try that, maybe eventually I will strike gold and I'll finally have all the money that we need. And
I think what's fascinating to me about these two different mindsets is they can happen with people at vastly different levels of wealth. And just be clear, financial wealth, right?
Mhm.
I can think of people that I've known in my life that have very high levels of financial wealth. And I believe, not to speak for them, but I believe that they still have a scarcity mindset. And I know people that have been at the other end of that level, not having that extreme financial wealth, but having that abundance mindset, right? And having that mindset of what we have is great for us and we want to do XYZ with it. And you know what? It'll go away and but we're going to do what we can to make it come back. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very easy to say, yeah, people at this level of financial wealth have this mindset. People at this level of financial wealth have this mindset.
Yeah, no way.
And it's not true. Right. I mean, there's the movie, what is it? The Will Smith movie, Pursuit of Happiness.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that we watch in that movie, it's a really good representation of these abundance and scarcity mindsets of people at very vastly different levels of financial security.
Yeah. And I don't remember it exactly, but I think he might have had an abundance mindset.
Yeah.
Because one of the main ways that you can notice an abundance mindset is someone who believes the more I work with other people, the better it will be.
Interesting.
Right? Wasn't
Yeah.
he like
he wanted
collaborative and basically he learned if you connect and communicate with other people, collaborate with other people, you're going to succeed.
Yeah.
that's just trusting that there's enough for everyone.
Yeah.
And if we work together, we can make even more. I think scarcity mindset says there's only enough for one or two of us to succeed. And so if there's too many of us, we have to hoard, whether it's hoard our wealth or our knowledge or whatever resource it is, that's going to make sure that we get there, because not everybody can get there.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree completely. And again, I think there's pros and cons to really everything in life, right? And I think there's pros and cons to both of those mindsets. I think an abundance mindset, when you think about the pros, obviously there's that generosity, sharing, experiential type of mindset. The cons are, hey, it'll really hurt if that money doesn't come back the way you thought it would. Or you think about the scarcity mindset, and the pros of that are maybe there's some more security in that. Right? But then the con is, what is that doing from an anxiety? You got something to say here?
Yeah. So I feel like in some way scarcity can be, I'm keeping all the money for myself. But I think also in some way the scarcity mindset tells you when you have it, you have to use it because this is your only chance.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
When I heard you talking about what you do with your family, that didn't sound like scarcity. Okay, this money's going to be gone. It's sure, maybe we could save more, but we have something now.
Yeah.
Let's make the best of it because we know there will be more, versus we have money, we should use all of it now.
Right.
Because this is our only chance. What if we don't ever have that opportunity again?
Yeah. So much of this is multifactorial, right? Like we talked in previous conversations, right? About like the fragility of life and some of the things that we do that drives us differently as we've kind of come to terms with maybe more of the fragility of life. And I hear kind of from you of like, got to do it now because you don't know what tomorrow holds.
Yeah.
That's a mindset for sure. Right. And
Scarcity of time.
Right.
Yeah. This is really interesting. It's making me think so much about myself more. And I did some research and I thought about this episode and what to do, but it didn't hit until I started talking about it.
But again, what we talked about before is that finance, and people don't talk about finances. I would say the last time I talked about my finances with anybody but my wife was probably when I talked about my first big boy job offer, and I was just so excited about it. And I told my mom about it and my dad about it. I don't know that was a conversation we had.
Yeah.
It was more of a, hey, this is what happened.
Yeah. To your point, I don't talk about it with people. I talk about it with my wife to some extent, but whenever I'm talking about it in some way with other people, it feels uncomfortable and a little bit embarrassing.
Sure.
Because there's things that I do that I maybe know aren't the best to do. And there's resources that I don't have and resources that I do have that make me embarrassed or nervous depending on who I'm talking to. And just sitting here talking about it feels really useful because again, saying things out loud, I kind of have to own it now and look at it differently. And I appreciate that this does speak to the man up together part of this. And so I'm loving that.
I think there's this societal kind of willingness to not talk about finances. One of the things, so being in corporate America, I've seen a shift in the past 15 years, just in something as simple as a job description that you're posting online, where for how many years it was inquire after application about salary or whatever that sentence is that basically says we're not publicly sharing what the salary of this position is. To today, I have seen a shift, and this is probably in the past less than 5 years, of salaries being very transparent, and not just salaries, benefits, bonus structures in a job description. And not only that, but within companies, and I'm sure some are more open and less open than others about finances and salaries, those conversations, I think, have been more transparent, and people have been more willing to share and have that conversation. I know recently I had a conversation with a colleague looking for another position, and I said, hey, take a look at this one. And they said, oh, that looks good, but right now I'm making X amount of dollars, and so that wouldn't work. And for some reason it just hit me like, oh, you just told me what you make, like from a salary perspective.
Like, oh, people don't always do that.
Right. Yeah. And it was like, but that transparency helped me to say, oh, I'm not going to waste my time sending these jobs to this person that aren't going to fit what they're looking for in, within their need from a financial perspective.
Yeah, I like what you're bringing up because it actually makes me think again about scarcity and abundance mindset, because a lot of corporations for the longest time have been very secretive within themselves about who makes what. And I think that is taking advantage of a scarcity mindset.
Absolutely.
We don't want you to talk to each other. We want you to try and get more than each other.
Absolutely.
Versus what has started to happen is people realizing if we talk to each other, we actually have more power now.
Leverage.
Because now we can go and we can say, why does this person make that much money and do the same thing as I do, but I make less?
Yep.
That's an abundance mindset of saying, if we work together, if we are open about this together, we can rise together.
Yeah. Now, it may have been a really hard conversation, but we're having the conversation, right? And so as you think about the corporations with the scarcity mindset, right, I think it goes back to how workers are viewed, assets versus liabilities.
And if you're treating people like they matter and they can have this abundance mindset, they're actually going to be happier working for you and they're going to do better working for you, and morale is going to be different. And I think it works for everybody.
I read an article recently about Costco. I love going to Costco. I can get a piece of pizza and hot dog and a soda for $3. But it was talking about the way that Costco treats their employees versus some of their competitors. The competitors in that space that don't have that same mindset when it comes to their employees. And when you look at the success of Costco versus their competitors, it's pretty apparent who's succeeding in that space versus others.
Costco in an abundance mindset.
It's pretty...
I think that's perfect.
Right?
And I could be making a joke here, but the thing that I'm actually thinking about most, they say we will never charge more than $1.50 for our hot dog and drink combo. They are making less and less and less money.
They are now losing money. They are losing money
on that. But they are saying we have an abundance mindset because if we continue to reward people who enjoy that hot dog and want to be a member of Costco, they're going to come and we're going to benefit from them as well. And everyone can get something here. We don't have to make sure we make the margin we need off of a hot dog because we know there's enough for everyone
and
here.
It's pervasive
if we give somewhere, we get somewhere else.
It's pervasive across a variety of those things, right? Whether it's their hot dog, their rotisserie chicken, the gas prices. I mean, all of those things that, you hit the nail right on the head.
We're okay
You're hitting the
giving because we know we're going to get the more we give.
Right.
That sounds like abundance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love that. Costco.
Perfect.
There we go. Yeah. So let's move into talking about finance and relationships, because we're talking about saying it out loud, talking about it is good. You brought up bringing things up with your wife a little bit and not so much growing up. And I think it becomes this important idea of what about the most important person in your life?
Yeah.
How are you talking about it together? Are you on the same page? What happens because you have two different upbringings and maybe an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset or two different ways that they show up, and how can you hold that together? So I think that'll be a great thing for us to talk about.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I know for myself, when my wife and I talk about finances, it is stressful and I'm nervous and careful. And I'm also a little bit worried that we're going to disagree. And I think sometimes that makes me not always bring it up or not always say what I want to say. And then when we do, I'm probably nervous enough that it doesn't always come out well. And then we can get stuck.
Yeah. So I know that my parents fought about finances frequently. I know that amongst lots of reasons, I think oftentimes divorce is multifactorial. Finances were part of the reason that my parents' marriage ended in divorce. And I know that deeply. And because of that, right, our backgrounds dictate who we are as people and how we do things. I know that I have made it a point in my marriage that I am oftentimes unsuccessful at, that I don't want to fight about finances. And I think that manifests itself in a couple of different ways. I think it can manifest itself in avoidance. So we just don't talk about it because I'm not going to fight about it. We've talked about this before. It can manifest itself in a good way of, I would like to have a conversation, but I don't want it to end up in an argument. Those are the ways that I hope those conversations happen. I would say it doesn't happen.
Do you say that? I want to have a conversation.
I have said those words before. It is not the most successful thing all the time, because I think sometimes it just puts it out there of, this is going to cause an argument, but I'm just going to say I don't want to have an argument anyways. Sometimes I have,
but that changes I feel like that changes the vibe of a conversation. You're basically saying, I know this is going to be hard. I know sometimes we argue about this, but I don't want it to happen this time. And
Yeah.
of course, you're not always going to be successful. You can't just say it into reality.
Yeah.
But in some way, I think saying it, you're kind of becoming a little bit vulnerable
Oh,
in that
absolutely.
moment and saying, this matters to me, you matter to me. This is scary.
Yeah.
Can we try and maybe do better?
And yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, that's all the things that go through my head. And so I bring that all up to say it's hard to have those conversations with, again, the person that I care the most about.
Yeah.
And yet I think it's very important to have those conversations. When my wife and I got married, before we got married, we lived together before we got married. We had separate finances before we got married. Once we got married, we combined our finances. And since we have been married, we have a singular checking account and savings account for saving. We are
one entity,
equal partner
Yeah.
in our finances. I know that's not the case for everybody. I know there's a lot of different ways that people work their finances in relationships. But I think for us and in my relationship, it's worked out because we have a shared view of the state of our finances. We have a shared view of the state of our obligations. There's no hiding in these places. Not that hiding is a good thing, but there's no, it is what it is, right? And man, now it's even easier. It's on your phone. It's on an app. You know, at least when growing up, my parents had to go to the bank and go to the ATM to figure out it, or at least keep their checkbook in some semblance.
Did you balance your checkbook this month?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It's interesting because you're talking about shared finances versus relationships where people keep their finances separate. And I've seen a lot of both in working with couples. And it's making me think now again about the abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset, where we have decided to share our lives with each other. We've decided to maybe have children together, buy a house together, just be in a committed relationship with each other. And it makes me think about couples who don't join their finances. Is it a scarcity mindset?
Yeah, what's driving that?
Yeah. And I don't want to judge and say one's right and one's wrong. I can say through experience in couples therapy, those who share their finances and kind of become one entity financially, a lot of the stress comes from making sure they can be on the same page and feel like they have the same values. And that can be tricky. The couples who keep their finances separate, the stressful part becomes around feeling disconnected from each other, feeling unequal, feeling unappreciated, that it feels like those things amplify and get bigger. And the most powerful thing that happens in a relationship that keeps us moving toward the same goals is connection. And so it makes me think, is this a way to feel disconnected from each other because something is actually disconnected? You can feel disconnected from your partner when you're talking about finances, even if you have one bank account, but you are disconnected in the other one unless you're very, very intentional about what it means to be a unit financially.
I want to ask you a question. As a therapist, people go to therapy for a lot of reasons. From a couple's perspective, where do finances rank in the reason that people oftentimes are seeking out?
It's high up there. There's been some studies done, and there's I guess a common notion of finances is always the biggest thing in a relationship. And they found, no, that is not the biggest stressor. The biggest stressor on a relationship is having children.
Yeah. Also very impactful on your finances.
I'm pretty sure finances is second. It's up there. It wasn't that you're completely off. There's just one thing that is definitely more. There are other things that can be tricky. Communication styles, sex can be a big one, but finances is for sure a heavy hitter when it comes to that.
Why? What drives a lot of the disconnect, animosity? What is it that makes finances such a big part of our challenges with our relationships?
Yeah. From my opinion, I would say there's a few factors that I think about. One of them is there is a stigma not to talk about finances. And in order to be a successful adult, you have to know how to handle finances. It's kind of setting us up not to succeed there, right? This is not about who's right and who's wrong and who's good and who's bad. It's about we grew up not knowing how to talk about this. We grew up not learning as much as we've needed to about this. And now we are two adults trying to live a life together. And how are we going to talk about this in a successful way out of nowhere?
So I like that you brought that up. I'm going to pause you for 12 seconds here. Is that we talked about in the beginning of like, how do we break that generational cycle
Yeah.
with our children? Because I want my daughters to be able to have a conversation with people that they care about their finances, right?
Yeah.
I have no idea how to make that
Well,
outside of mimicking the behavior that hopefully my wife and I can have.
that's
Yeah,
number one always in everything.
right.
Model
Yeah,
what you want them to be. You should first just be it.
right.
Always, that's number one. Also, I think there's programs out there
Yeah.
now and certain types of bank accounts and
Yeah, that's
debit
true.
cards
Yeah.
and things for kids. Like, I'm fascinated by this, and we're not ready at the age we're at yet now, but that's something that I want to look into, what it's like for them to start to gain financial literacy
Yeah.
by living it before it is dire in your
Sure.
relationship or in college or whatever it is. So that's a good point. I think another one is we are all raised differently.
Mhm.
And so it's very common for two people to be in a relationship and not have the same exact idea about money, not have the same exact habits around money.
Or even the same exact, I would say, experience with certain levels of money around you, right? You
True.
know,
Yeah.
my wife and I grew up in different places and I think different levels of financial access.
And just talking about in heterosexual relationships, men and women are also socialized differently around
Mhm.
money. And sometimes you see the man is the provider and he's the one who's supposed to talk about it. He's going to talk to his sons about it, which I think is great to talk
Yeah.
about that. But did you forget you have to talk to your daughters about that as well?
Right.
And if you're in the past, especially, it's been very much the man's job
Mhm.
to manage the finances. Was he maybe not even talking to his wife?
Right.
And the children see that. And now, again, just in heterosexual relationships, a man and a woman are creating a life together. And one of them might have learned, yeah, you talk about it all the time. And
Mhm.
this is how you invest. And this is how you spend. And this is how you start a business. And this is how you ask for more money at your job. And maybe the other partner wasn't socialized in the same way to do that.
When you bring up the dual roles in those and again heterosexual relationships, I think as I was researching and reading about for before this episode, I don't have this actual statistic number, so I'm not going to quote them, but it was interesting to see the difference in how men and women were taking responsibility for finances throughout generations, right? So when we think of the Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Y, millennials, and that kind of transition there,
Mm,
and I think the last statistic that I did remember reading was that in millennial relationships, right? We're both the men and the woman in the relationship. We're both in that millennial generation. Men still were responsible for what they said 65% of financial decisions in the relationship. However, when they did the survey, they wanted to be more of an equal partnership,
uh-huh.
which was different than in previous generations
Yeah.
where they didn't want to be an equal partner and didn't believe that to be an important tenet of the
Right.
relationship.
It's like the idea is getting there, but the practice is still lagging a little bit.
Exactly right.
Yeah, that's very
And it's like
interesting.
interesting to me of that, like, well, if that's what you want, then do it, right? So what's
Yeah,
what's the
easier
hard
said than if
right?
that's what you want, then do it. Except again, you were socialized not to.
Bingo,
Right. That
right, right,
you're hearing that it is possible now, which sounds cool.
yeah,
You still didn't grow up that way, and your partner still didn't grow up that way.
yeah,
So yeah, that's really hard.
yeah. So
Yeah.
as I think about maybe some of the things that we've talked about in other episodes. Why can things be hard? You know, and I think about why can talking about finances and dealing with finances in a relationship be hard? This is going to surprise you.
Here we go.
Vulnerability required to have some of these conversations. You need trust in that person,
Yeah.
whether it's because you want to have trust that that person is going to keep maybe things that you're telling them in confidence. Maybe again, these are things that you meant use the word, things that you're embarrassed about, things that you want to understand. You want to have the support of that person, and maybe it you don't. It's hard to understand that. Like I think in dating, right? And I haven't dated for a very long time, but I think in dating, there's things that you talk about your future and what you want your future to look like. I don't know, and maybe this is more commonplace
Mm.
now. I don't know that like where you are financially and the financial part of that conversation happened, or at least happens all that frequently in those conversations, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I know that I want to grow up and, I'm a dog person. Are you a cat person? But like, I'm a I'm a scarcity mindset. Are you an abundance mindset when it comes to your
Right.
finances? And maybe those are the types of questions that like
Yeah, this is how
we
much I want
should
to
be
save
talking about.
for retirement each month.
Right.
You don't talk about that stuff.
No, of course
Yeah.
not. It's never fun to be surprised by anything. And I think sometimes finances can come as a surprise in a relationship.
Yeah.
And so, I won't say it's never fun to be surprised. You can be surprised by things that are
Wait,
good surprises.
I think you mean it though. For you, I don't think it's ever fun to be
Correct.
surprised.
Correct. You're right. I think you can't have good surprises, whether you want a
But
good
some
surprise
people.
or a bad surprise. But again, I think surprises can be a challenge for some people. And again, there's a level of trust that you have to have with the person that you're with. And then there's a level of trust you have to have with yourself too. This person's telling me something that maybe is in confidence, that I don't want to break that confidence, or I don't want to react in a way that may change their perception of me
Yeah.
based on something new that I'm learning. So it's perfectly okay that I react in a way based on learning. So I think there's a lot of reasons, for me at least, from the non-therapy brain, of why is it hard to talk about finances, and why can finances be a challenge? And finances bring up emotion,
They do.
right? Emotion can bring up anger, which is an emotion. I know that.
Nailed it.
So I just think that it can be hard to have those conversations.
Yeah, definitely emotional, right? The ways that we communicate in relationship they always can be traced back to emotion. So something that is as charged as finances, for sure, that's going to play a big part of that. And something I guess I didn't even realize to make sense of bringing up, just talking about heterosexual relationships, we talked about in Why Do Men Like This, that men have a higher propensity for risk taking and women feel safer with the conservative strategies in investing, right? You're already talking about you're set up for these differences, that emotion is for sure going to play a big part in those kind of conversations, when one person might be saying, come on, this is how we can hit it big. And the other person is saying, but if you just do this, we know it'll just keep growing and we might not ever hit it big, but we will also probably not
lose it big.
And
that's,
I
think alignment, right?
Yeah.
I think that maybe it's sometimes easier to gain alignment in relationships on other things, how we eat, how we keep the house clean or not clean.
Yeah. And the stakes are lower if you don't find alignment too.
Bingo. Yeah. Absolutely. So relationships, finances, intertwined.
And it's interesting, just kind of playing back a little bit of how we ended up talking about this, because I feel like it's a really good way to think about ourselves in general. Where does this come from in general? What are the ways that usually can manifest itself? Right? We talked about the abundance and scarcity mindsets. And then how does this show up in our relationships, right? That we can track so many things in that way. I'm glad that we organized it that way in hindsight.
For sure. Well, and what can we do as we think about maybe ways to break some of these cycles that we see? Again, neither one of us are giving financial planning information.
But we did sit here and talk about it with each other today. And I went, oh, this is actually helping me understand so much about myself. And those are the strategies that we can give, understanding how powerful it is to find yourself around people that you trust or want to take risks to trust in your life. And we hope that we can make people feel more and more comfortable to try that.
Awesome. Well, this is fun.
All right. Finances.
All
right. So let's end the episode with our new segment, Ask a Therapist versus Ask a Regular Guy. And today, I think the regular guy has a question.
I got a question. I was out at a work trip this past week, and I had no idea the conversation came up, but I was saying, I think I was looking through a calendar looking for a meeting. I said, oh, no, got counseling at that time. And I got kind of like a weird look. And I was like, oh, yeah, my wife and I go to counseling. We have our entire marriage. We get talking about that. So here's my question for you, because it came up in the conversation. The mindset around, do couples only go to counseling when something bad happens and when they're trying to fix something? So I'm going to ask a counselor, do couples only go to counseling when something bad happened or when they're trying to fix something?
Yeah. So research has found that in general, couples go to couples therapy 7 years later than they should have for it to be as effective as they want it to.
7 years is a long time.
Yeah.
A
7 years is a long time.
Long time.
And so I think the answer is probably closer to, they go when things are wrong and there's something that needs to be worked on.
Sure.
I think therapy can be very effective and successful if you're going because you're saying, hey, we are doing something really important in our lives. We've decided we want to be together. And what if we go and open up in this process in a way that can just help us grow and be better? This sounds so aspirational as I'm saying it out loud. And I've maybe met a handful of couples in therapy who have said that when they've come to sit down on the couch, but it's beautiful when it happens.
Yeah.
And they're generally open and available to growth and understanding and strength to be built in the relationship. But most of the time, people choose to go to therapy when they are really, really stuck in something. I would say it's far more common that people go when they say, this is our last hope, than when they say, we just want to see what comes up so that we can be as strong as possible, where that second one is way
better,
more effective. The first one has less of a chance because you waited that long. Most people, I think, do come sooner than this is the last chance. But
I appreciate that. So I'll give my regular guy answer. And this has taken some time to figure out in my life and my brain. We talked to the fitness episode last week. I've come to this conclusion that mental health and physical health should not be as disconnected as they are. And I go and get a physical every year. Oftentimes, thankfully, my physicals are, hey, nothing's wrong. Tell me if something's the matter. Mental health checkups, I think, should be similar. Hey, nothing's wrong.
Yeah.
But let's see if there's something that we can find that could use some help, right? Like nothing was wrong.
Like a tune-up.
My blood pressure was a little high. So we made some changes in my life to figure that out. Hey, nothing's wrong mentally, but let's talk about some things and see if there's some things that we can fix, like a tune-up, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that that's, again, aspirational. And I think that it's not just because people don't like, there's a time aspect, there's a financial aspect of it. There's a health insurance doesn't cover it because I don't know why aspect of it, right? I think that if we can maybe change that narrative a little bit into, it's not just something you do when something's broken. It's something you do maybe to identify if something is broken or if something could use a little bit of help. That was not something that a mindset that I had for a long time. It's something that's taken a lot of conversations with people like you, people like my wife, like your wife, to have that kind of understanding and viewpoint. So hopefully I had that conversation during this work trip of that's just what we do. And I appreciate the insight there and regular guy question to a therapist.
No, I love that question. And I love living for a moment in that aspirational world.
It's fun.
Where people just say, wow, let's go to therapy and just make sure that we're getting the tune up.
Yeah.
And just doing great things with each other instead of, the trickier one. But
awesome.
Also there for it, for the tricky one.
Well, if you've got any regular guy questions, whether it's a regular guy question for a therapist or a regular guy question for a
equine nutritionist,
which, hey, if you got them, let's hear them. Let us know on Instagram at Man Up Together Podcast or email us questions at manuptogetherpodcast.com.
And if you're realizing maybe I don't want to wait for 7 years or realizing finances is a really tricky thing and I want to make sense of it on an individual level or on a couples level, you should go to the relationshiphouse.org. We can set you up with a therapist and help you talk about it. And if you're not in our area, can also send you in the right direction. Would love to be able to help anyone who's interested in that as well.
Well, with that, appreciate it.
Yeah. So we will see you next week. We will continue to try and man up together. The Man Up Together podcast was produced and edited by Alex Peskin and Bobby Jacobs. Special thank you to our wives, family, friends, and coworkers who have supported us in so many ways throughout this process. You can find us on Instagram at Man Up Together Podcast, and you can email us at questions@manuptogetherpodcast.com. If you are interested in joining us on this journey, please like, subscribe, and share this with someone you care about. Thank you for listening. See you next week.